Hey guys, Peter Cunningham. I'm back, and I hope today I'm able to add some value to your life. I wanna mention and talk to you briefly today about the value and the importance of friendships. I don't know how easy it is for you. If you're a dude, it's probably a lot like me. It's a part-time job that sometimes we have to work hard to make something happen. But if you don't roll deep in the influence of evangelical pastors and leaders and writers, which probably most of you don't, you may be unaware of the suicide recently, or even the large amount of suicides that have been happening in amongst that community over the last couple of years. This past Thursday, it was May 7th. I received a text message from a friend, and he asked me if I'd heard about Darren Patrick dying. I have a couple of his books on my shelf, and it was a shock to all of us. In fact, it was a shock, and it was just a sudden death, is what is classified as. But about 18 hours later, it was coming out that he had died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Darren is a pastor of a mega church in South Carolina with lots of different campuses. At one point, he was the chaplain for the St. Louis Cardinals and the pastor of a very large church in St. Louis that he had started. And so it became a shock just to see another person fall from that level. A day later, that same friend that notified me of his death texted me, and we were back and forth, and he said, man, you have to promise me that if you were ever thinking thoughts about life not being worth it anymore or escaping, that you have to tell me. When I ask you, you have to be honest with me. Of which I told him, yeah, definitely. I'm fortunate to have relationships and friendships with some guys that I can be very transparent with. Um, I like to consider myself a friend before I am the pastor or role model, whatever someone might want to throw at it, the title they might want to throw at it. But you see, ministry is a very, very lonely profession. I don't feel like it has to be that way, but it is. And if you've ever been in church long enough, you've tried to get close to a pastor, or maybe you've been part of a situation when a pastor left. There's some stats from this website called Soul Shepherding. 75% of pastors, these are all evangelical pastors, 75% of pastors report being extremely stressed or highly stressed. 90% of them work between 55 to 75 hours a week. 90% feel fatigued and worn out. A large percent say or 70% say they're grossly underpaid. I've never claimed that. 40% say they have a serious conflict with a parishioner at least once a month. 78% were forced to resign. 63 of that percent it's happened to at least twice. Most commonly because of a church conflict. 8% will not be in the ministry in 10 years, and only a fraction will make it a lifelong career. On average, seminary-trained pastors only last in a church for 5 years. 100% of 1,050 Reformed and evangelical pastors that were surveyed, 100% of them said they had a friend, a colleague who had been in the ministry, who had left the ministry because of burnout, church conflict, or moral failure. 91% have experienced some form of burnout in the ministry, and 18% said they're fried to a crisp right now. And these are common things that happen. And the emphasis on Darren Patrick's suicide and Jared Wilson's suicide that's happened most recently, and several others that kind of slide in under the radar just because they're not on the large stage and the platform of a huge congregation. It reminds me the importance of friendships, and it's something we all have to work hard to. And for men, it's especially real. I want to tell you two verses real quickly. In Proverbs 27:17, it's a verse that many of us know. You may not know where it's at, but it says this in the New Living Translation: as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens another. So important for that illustration. It takes a strong metal to rub against the other strong metal in the same way over and over and over again to make it sharp. And the only way you can have that sharpness is sometimes by friction. Well, it's by friction, but it's by extremely close relationship. I'm reading through the Bible in a format I never have before. It's a brand new Bible, but I came across yesterday, 2 days ago, in 1 Samuel. It was chapter 14. I'm just going through, and Samuel's one of my favorite books in the Old Testament. But Saul is just been named king, and Saul's going around just marching and fighting against the Philistines. And he says this, or it said this in the passage, the last verse in chapter 14, this is verse 52. It says, there was hard fighting against the Philistines all the days of Saul. And when Saul saw any strong man or valiant man, he attached himself to him. You know, that's something that I think we're lacking in our society, whether it's a church leader, whether you're a friend, is that we're always at conflict. So often it's conflict with ourselves. So often it's conflict with sin. And in my own personal life, a phrase that I've carried with me is sin breeds in isolation. See, my goal in life is to live a life that's as sin-free as possible, following the life of Jesus Christ. And if sin breeds in isolation, the further I separate myself from friendships, from relationships, I lose accountability. It's easy for me to lose that battle with sin. You see, this isn't a vlog post about, or a comment on for pastors only. It's about relationships and friendships, and especially for men. You see, guys, we cannot stop pursuing friendships. You see, when we stop pursuing friendships, we stop being known. They don't know what we're struggling with. They don't know our inner battles. They don't know the thoughts and the anxiety we're allowing to rip our minds apart. My goal in life has always been, when I'm in public with some of my friends, is to be introduced, not, hey, this is Peter, he's my pastor, or hey, this is Peter, this is my pastor, my youth pastor, Peter. I want to be introduced as, hey, this is my friend Peter. Oh yeah, he's my pastor, he's my youth pastor. But to be someone's friend is so important, to have that friend that sticks, to be that friend that sticks closer to the brother. You know, that's Christ, but I want to have that relationship with other people as well. You see, if we're going to see victory and change, like I mentioned last week in our lives, we're going to have to get real with each other. We're going to have to live in transparency. We're going to have to be willing to sit down at the campfire, whether we're drinking our sodas and drinks and eating our snacks. And so often we're going to have to turn the conversation from football or COVID or our wives to, man, what's God doing in your life? What's the struggles you're struggling with? Importance about friendships is there's confidence and trust. Who is it that you have confidence and trust with? If you don't, man, seek that out. Pray. Ask God to give you a friend, whoever it might be. It may be me. It may not be me. It might be someone in your life group, at a church group. It might be a coworker, whoever it is. But you see, we have to pursue relationships. Don't allow yourself to be separated and live a life that is in nothing but pain and isolation.